the November-October final exam. Very interesting exam, tested some of the unusual topics, but overall at the end of the day, it is still based on what you are expected to know. I think if you found even some of the topics a bit unusual, it might be worth going back to the notes and going back to what? Going back to the videos as we discussed. But maybe before we go, and just to touch on process costing, because I always find that process costing are those questions that are scary, but once you understand what you're trying to do, they become much easier to do. Remember, we said that we are trying to focus on a process, right? So the process itself has got output and it's got input. So before we even go further, so we've got input and output. And when we say process costing, we are saying that it's going through this process and this is what we are trying to cost. So now let's consider a couple of scenarios to make sense of this. So if I say to you that I'm a manufacturer of, let's say, cold drinks, and the way that it works is that my cold drink is not so complicated. Let's say it's liquid and soda. And I tell you that the cold drink that I want to produce is 1 liter, right? So that's my output. My input is also in liquids, water and soda. And I'm telling you that for me to produce that 1 liter, I need 1 liter of input altogether. So in other words, what I will buy, I'll go buy, say, water of 800 milliliters and soda of 200 milliliters, mix them together, get 1 liter, and with that 1 liter, I get 1 liter of a bottle altogether, right? Then that's the basic scenario. The other scenario will be, or let's call this scenario A. Then scenario B will then say to me that I still want 1 liter of what? 1 liter of output. But the issue is that for me to get 1 liter, I have to put in more. Why do I need to put in more? Because during the process, there is some water that will be spilled and therefore I will not get it to be at the end. Then I can say that out of all my input, I lose 10% altogether. So now I say that when the year started, I want to produce some quantity of output, and I tell you that I put in 100 liters. How much liters of output will I expect to get if in my process I lose 10%? So I will expect to have what? 90 liters. Does that make sense? So that is, we are building it up for you to understand the basic fundamental. But what if I tell you that the year started and I put in 200 liters and I got 175 liters. My process is still the same, I lose 10. So when I ask you, how do you reconcile the fact that I've put in 200 and I only got 175? How do I reconcile the two? What do you think happened? So first of all, do you agree with me that the thought process is the following? The thought process is that you always start with output, right? So you'll then say output is what? It's 175 altogether. But this has to reconcile back to the input. Always you need to reconcile back to the input. So you need to be able to explain to someone that how did you use the input to get the output that we now see. So now I know for sure that I input what? I input 100, but I got 175. So what is the reason between what? Between the output of 175 and the 200. I need to be able to reconcile. That's what transfer pricing is all about. So now for one thing for sure is that we lose how much in the process? We lose 10%, and that is what we call our normal altogether. So if I've put in 200 and I've ended up with, if I put in 200, what should be my normal? What should be my normal? 20 altogether. But does this add up to 200? So there's something missing. So that something missing is what? It's the abnormal loss. Are we all clear? Does that make sense? So now let's consider another scenario. I've put in 300, right? And then at the end of the day, I got 280. And still my process loses 10%, right? So now I'm asking you, let's reconcile that back, right? So every time I said when you reconcile, we start with what? With the output, right? Where is the rubber thing? There we go. So what is my output? 280, right? And I reconcile back to my what? To my input of 300. Do you see that? So if I put in 300, what was my normal? It'll be what? 30. But when I add this up, what do I have? 310. It's not reconciling back to the 300. Meaning what? Meaning that there is an abnormal gain of 10. Do you see that? Are we all clear? So the point is always to reconcile output and input. It should always be explained that way. So when you draw your table, the issue is that you always need to have input and conclude with the, you start with output and you need to conclude with the input. It always has to reconcile. Is that clear? So now let's introduce wastage point. So wastage, we are saying that we lose what? We lose, no, maybe before we do that, let's introduce closing stock. So now, let's consider scenario C. Maybe let me delete some of this. So in scenario C, I tell you that let's do this. Let's start off with 100, right? Then during the process, we're going to get to a point where we are saying we don't want to put our employees to work on things that might be damaged. So then I put a stoppage point and say every time at 60% of the process, let's stop the process and let's inspect everything before we get to the end. Because the problem is, if let's say we are manufacturing jeans and we find that one has got a torn pocket. So I don't want us to start knitting the other sides and so on, because that would be waste of material, waste of people's time for something that will never be right. So then we put in stoppage time so that we are able to do what? So that we are able to say, halt the process and let's do what? Let's check whether everything is fine. And when we stop the process, we are saying in this case, we are stopping the process at 60% in the process. And when we do that, we're going to find that 5% of our input is actually damaged altogether. So 60% in the process, we check everything we've put in and we find that 5% of it is damaged, right? Then we then continue with the 95%. Do you agree? Because the 5% that is damaged, we throw it away. So we continue with the 95%. And then when we get to the end, I say to you that I produced an output of what? I produced an output of 60 liters. Are we clear? Right? Then I had closing stock. I had closing stock or closing balance of 25 liters of input. Are we all clear what we have? So one, I put in 100 of these things into the process. I got through 60% of the process and I lost 5% of it. Then at the end of the day or month or week, I realized that I'm only done with what? With 60 liters of output. In other words, if there were a bottle, I'll have 60 bottles in here. Then I'm saying that about 25 liters that's still sitting in a bucket, it's not in the bottles, this one, it's not complete, right? And I realize that since it has passed 60%, I find that it's 80% complete altogether. And I say, the reason I didn't finish it is that I was 80% there. I'll wake up in the morning and finish the 20%. Do you agree? Do you understand so far? So now I'm saying that let's do the same thing that we did for this picture right here altogether. So,
60% you said it's for?
where we do the inspection.
Okay.
So we do the inspection, they call it the completion point. So not the completion point, the wastage point, in other words. Are we all clear with the facts? So now we start. We are saying that our objective is to reconcile everything back to what? Is to reconcile everything back to the input. So I start with my output, and I've got output of what? I've got my output of 60. And I close off with what? With my input of 100. So the mistake that I see a lot of candidates do is that they start applying the percentage here, where we are talking about the units are 80% complete and so on. So this is the 100% column. You are going to show 25% as closing stock, not as 80% times 25%. So the first column you have to reconcile 100% output and input altogether. So now we'll start. We'll say, all right, now let's go through this. So if our input is 100, what is our expected normal loss? What is our expected normal loss? So our expected normal loss is 5. Do you see this? Then I say that this does not add up to the input. Do you agree? Yes. It does not add up to the input because this what? There is closing altogether. Then I said, all right, there is closing WIP in this case. Closing WIP is what? 25 liters. But does this add up to 100? No. That's when I say this what? Abnormal loss. But do you see how it works when this closing stock? I have not considered the fact that this is 80% complete. At this point, my objective is to reconcile input and output. Does this make sense? Do we see this? So this is the classical one that you'll get in an exam. This is the classical one. So I just want you to see this so that when you talk about Ugogo, we'll be able to see. Then now, let's do the following. Let's introduce opening stock. Right? So I'm introducing opening stock. And I say to you that the opening stock is actually 50. Right? The opening stock is 50. Now let's update this. I make the output 80. Right? So what am I saying? I am saying that when the year started, I had 50 liters from the prior process that was not complete. Do you agree? Then I come and add 100 in the current year. So what is my total input during the period? 150. What I put in from the previous period plus what I just put in the current year. So now I have to reconcile back to the 150. Is that clear? But when I reconcile back to the 150, it is important for me to know at what percentage was the opening stock sitting. Right? So it could be sitting, scenario A, it could be sitting before the wastage point. Let's say before the wastage point altogether. So it's sitting, say, at 40% complete. Right? Then, in scenario B, let's say that it is after the wastage point. It is sitting at what? It is sitting at 80%. after the wastage point, and let's say it's 80% after the wastage point. Do we see this? Are we all clear? So now let's start with number A. When the stock is sitting before the wastage point, right? So now I say output. Always I start with my output. My output is what? My output is 8. Then my input is what? Do you see that? Okay. Then, what is my normal and what is my, so what is my normal, what is my closing, and what is my abnormal? Let's go. Reconcile that for me. Reconcile that for me. Reconcile that for me. I want to start with the normal loss. So let's deal one by one. First, give me the normal loss. What is the normal loss? 7.5 units. How did you get to it? What did you say? So do you agree that the normal loss, what she is saying to us is because since we started with this having before it had gone through the wastage point, it means that it's going to go through the wastage point in the current year. And therefore it will lose 5%. That is the 50. Then the 100, since it was put in this year, there is no way that it will not pass what? It will not pass the stoppage point altogether. So now we come here and we say that we have what? We have 50 plus 100 liters, right? Multiply by 7.5. Sorry, 5%. Then this is, you said what? 7.5. I've got 7.5 liters. Does this add up to this? No. Because of what? Because of what? Because of closing. And remember that I'm still working with what? 100%. Do you agree? Out together. Then I'm saying that whatever is missing, it is meant to what? It is meant to reconcile. So it can be what? Our abnormal loss in this case. Sorry, it will be 37.5. But now it is reconciled. Do you see this? Does this make sense? Now, let's consider scenario B. Scenario B, I'm saying that when the year started, you had 50, but the 50 had passed the wastage point already. Do you agree? The 50 had passed the wastage point already. So now I do my 80 as the input and my 150 as the output altogether. But what is my normal loss? What is my normal loss? Do you agree that I will not have another loss on the 50 because it had it in the previous period altogether? So that means we exclude this as a subject of the loss and we put this altogether. Then what do we have? We've got 5. And closing is still 25 and the balancing will be normal, abnormal. Do you see how this works? Are we seeing how this works?
I'm lost on that 5%.
Why are you lost, or where are you lost?
Where the normal loss.
Yeah?
Normal loss.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that we don't take. I don't get why we're taking 5%.
No, 5% is our loss.
Yes.
Yes, why, what are you seeing?
On the previous one, we had
On this one?
7.5 years.
Yeah?
We had 7.5.
Yeah.
Now we're using 5 liters.
Hmm?
I don't get that.
No, what we are saying is that it's on the 100 liters this time.
It's not on 150.
It's not on 150 because the 50 has already lost its normal in the previous year period. Because when it came in, it was already at 80% completion stage. And it means that last year they had gotten to the 60% completion stage and they had said, let's disregard. So that means by this time, when it got to the end of the year, it was already fine. It was already after the normal loss.
Okay.
Question?
So what happens to the opening working process of 50? Does it mean that we are no longer taking into account this year if it has passed the wastage point?
No, but remember that some costs have to be committed to it to finish it. Remember that it was not complete. So at this stage, you are still working out the units. Then you're going to have to work out the price. But to work out the price, you're saying that since you are telling me it's 80% complete, I need to incur cost of 20% to complete it.
But
Mhm.
we only take that 100 liters and not, I don't get it.
Which part are you not getting? Don't confuse the issue. Start with the units. Because once you get the units right, the cost is not the complex part. So which part of the units don't you get? Let's start there.
Okay.
Mhm.
I get that we have, in the current year, we have that 100 input, that 100 liters of input. And then in the previous year that we carried into this year, we had 50 liters.
Yeah.
So
Which was 80% complete.
Yes.
Yes.
And then now it's after the wastage point.
Mhm.
So what then?
What? Like, what is the question?
So if it's after the wastage point of 60%, then that means that we do not take that opening.
Because it can go through another loss. Remember that it is done itself.
Okay.
They've already inspected it.
Does it mean that in the previous year that opening work in process has passed that point, that wastage point in the previous year?
That's what it means. If they say to you it's 80% complete, they're actually saying that don't worry about stoppage in the current year. We are already done in the prior year. So we are already done. So it will be incorrect to come and say 50 times another loss because the loss has already been taken into account in the previous year. So it doesn't go through the loss twice. Are we together? Do you have your tutorial letters with you? Tutorial letters. The study guide. Yes, the study guide. So go to that keep and deduct slide where they had drawings. I just want to explain this process to you because it's useful, but it's very confusing. They've got 3 blocks or 3 diagrams under process costing where they say keep, deduct, keep, deduct, keep, deduct. You haven't looked at your study guides, right? Under process costing. We're on process costing. There it is it not the one? Those are the diagrams there. She's opening a tutorial slate. Which page is it? 56. So when you open page 56, what they do there, they've got a very interesting way that they represent this to make you better understand, right? So they even had 3 scenarios. And they were trying to make you understand this logic of stoppage point or wastage point. So let's just consider scenario A. Can someone give me the facts for scenario A? What did they say? They said opening of what? Scenario A. So it's scenario 1, 2, 3 on a single page. On a single page, 3 scenarios. So they say opening is what? So 20% complete. How much was it? 30,000. And then they said what? Input. Input 120,000. Right? Closing. 40% complete. And they sell how many units? 40,000. Then they gave you the wastage point. They say the wastage point is what? 50%, and they lose what? 10%. And they lose 10%. Right? So are we all clear with the facts? So now let's reconcile. So now the reconciliation, now let's look at this. So how much is your input? What is your total input? Do you agree that it's 150? Right? Now tell me, how much of that 150 will be subject to normal losses? How much of the 150 will be subject to normal losses? How much, based on this information right here, how much of the 150 will be subject to normal losses? 150. Okay, let's talk. Will the opening stock be subject to a loss? Yes or no? Why do you say that? It is a 20 and then wastage point altogether. So this is how they think about. They're saying you as a candidate do this. Say opening altogether, and say what? Say closing. Yes, sorry, you're right. What is it? Started. So they are saying break it down this way, right? When you break it down this way, you will say to the examiner 30, and you'll say wastage point, has it passed or not passed the wastage point? So is it before or after the wastage point? So wastage point is sitting here. So X, it is what? It is less or equal to, is this less than the wastage point altogether? Then what they say, you are telling me that you will then say times 10%, meaning that that will be the first portion of the loss, right? Then you will say started is what? 120. And you will say that has it passed what? Has it passed the wastage point altogether? So when you look at it, you'll then say that I have started, right? And I've got something that is not yet complete, right? So what did they say? They say here, what did they say? Input only or input and complete?
No, you have to do that closing. Doesn't go out into the 50.
Oh, you started. Where is it? Yes. No, wait. I want to just explain the logic of that slide. They do it a bit differently. So, because we'll get to the same. I just want you to understand that. I just want to understand what they're doing. What do they have there? Do they have 120 or one closing? So they've got closing. Yes, so they do closing. They do closing. So I just want to explain the logic that they follow so that you'll be able to follow this in an exam. So they say they've got total output, total input of what? Of 150, right? Yes. Then they say opening, you determine whether it has passed the wastage point or not. And we are saying that opening started with 20, and we are sitting with what? We are sitting with a wastage point of 50. So it had not passed. So it is subject to what? To wastage altogether. Then they say that closing is what? Is 40 altogether. Then they ask, has closing reached the wastage point? No. Right? So closing has not. So closing is less than the wastage point altogether. So if closing is less than the wastage point, will it have any losses?
No.
So it will not have, so there'll be no losses regarding to what? To closing altogether. So out of your input of 150, then how much will be subject to losses? Do you understand the question? So you put in 150, right? Yes. You don't worry about the units that we input or started and completed, because they will have gone through the entire stage. So you worry about input, so you worry about opening, and you also worry about closing only altogether. So you ask, opening, had it reached the wastage point? No, it had not reached the wastage point. So there's going to be losses in the current period altogether. Then closing, has it reached the what? Has closing reached the wastage point? If the answer is no, right? It means that it's going to reach the wastage point in the next year. Do you understand? So this year there are no losses relating to it. Do you understand? So if there are no losses, it seems that we started with 150, so we had total input of 150, but 40 of it will not have what? Will not be subject to what? To losses. So losses will just be how much? Will just be 11,000, 10% of 110. Is that clear? Yes. Then in your textbook or in your study guide, what they're saying that start with input and decide whether you need to keep or deduct from the input. So when you look at page 54 altogether, do you see page 54? Where is it? Yes, page 56. Do you see page 56? You see page 56? So they will say we started with input of 150. Then they're saying that it's opening in there, right? So they're wanting to check whether they should just simply multiply by 10% or not. That is the test. So they're saying that if they should keep it in there, the opening. Do you understand? Or they should remove it, right? It's either we keep it in there so that when you say 10%, it is in there, or we remove it. So their test will then say, opening work in progress, then they'll say 20%, and they say 30,000, right? Then they say keep or deduct. Then we said that it should be subject to the loss, so we keep it in there altogether. Then they go to the next one. They say closing work in progress. Then they say, has it passed the stage, the wastage point? They said no altogether. Then they say, what do? We deduct it. So that's what we are doing. We are saying 150 minus 40 equals to 110. We are deducting it because it has not gotten to the wastage point. Do you see what they're doing? So let's quickly do number 2, then we'll start with the paper. You'll see how that question was meant to be handled. So what do we have under scenario 2? Going back to the question, what do we have under scenario 2? So openings what? 40% now, right? Still 39. Then we've got input of 120. Closing? 30% complete. Wastage point? 25%, right? So now let's go to that keep and deduct story. So our total input is still what? Our total input is still 150. Do you agree? And we are tempted to multiply this by 10%. But we know we have to do the test. So we start with opening, right? Opening. Sorry. So opening, has it passed the wastage point? Do we need to have losses in the current year? So deduct. Do you understand? Out together. Then we have closing. Closing. Has it gone through the wastage point? It has gone. So will it be subject to the losses in the current year? Yes. So we keep. Do you understand? So our losses will then be on 150 minus what? Minus 30, which is? Times 10%. Do you see that? Do you see this?
Yes.
Do you understand now the keep and deduct? The logic behind it? Questions before we get to Ugog? Questions? Happiness. Okay, now we'll see how we handle it here. So now they're saying that we are on question 1, October, November 2018, 50 marks. Everybody? I've got extra copies. Wait, where are my extra copies? Should we go for it? Okay. So what I always like about your question paper is that at the cover page, they always tell you what they're going to test you on, right? So now we've got what? We've got in question 1, optimization, process costing, direct and absorption costing, planning and controlling inventory, as well as divisionalization. So the majority of what? The majority of the topics. All together. Then they're saying to us, Ugogo has for many years, or UB, has for many years manufactured its well-known brand of savory cheese biscuits and various sweet biscuits exclusively for the retail consumer market. The savory cheese biscuit manufacturing takes place at UB's Middleburg Bakery, and the sweet biscuits are manufactured at its Emalaheni Bakery. So 2 bakeries, the MB and the EB Bakery, right? The founder and the owner of UB is planning to retire in 2020. And as part of the succession plan, she is training her 2 daughters, Rosemary and Poppy, to eventually take over the business, and therefore appointed her daughters as 2 managers, as the managers of the respective divisions or bakeries. They say the year end is 30 November and it operates for all the 12 months for the year. The company uses first in, first out. So they even bolded it for you. That's important for process costing. That's important for inventory management. Then they say further that they use absorption costing, meaning that if I ask you, or if they ask you for the cost of a product, it will be the material cost labor cost, including a portion of overheads. So we note that as well, but again, they've bolded that for us. Then they start with EB, the Imalahleni Bakery, right? Imalahleni produces two types of sweet biscuits, the chocolate chip and the chocolate mint. They are packed in 200 grams, right? Meaning 1 kg will give us how many packs? How many? 5 packs altogether. The base dough of these two types of biscuits is similar, with only the quantity of chocolate, the baking time, and flavoring being the main differences, right? So the raw material, we don't expect them to be what? To be different from each other, right? Except for the fact that, or the difference will be attributable to the quantity of chocolate. Then they say that they've provided the budgeted information for the month of November 2018. An extract of the standards per unit reflecting the following: sales price, prime cost. Prime, we said that includes what and what? What are prime cost? Direct material and direct labor. Variable manufacturing overheads, fixed manufacturing overheads, variable selling cost, right? Then they say that November's budgeted manufacturing and sales demand for CC and CM are 3,000 and 2.8 units respectively, right? Fixed manufacturing overheads are absorbed on the budgeted oven baking time of each product. The budgeted fixed manufacturing overheads absorption rate determined at the beginning of the financial year, representing a normal month, is 12 Rand per hour. Right? Now, how many, at this time when you are reading, you need to determine how many baking time minutes are required per CC and per CM. How many? How many? 21 minutes for CC and
18 minutes for CM.
Just tell us how you got to those.
I said
Mm-hmm.
I took the fixed manufacturing overheads because it was they were absorbed based on the budgeted over. So I said 4.20 divided by 12.
Okay. And what do you have?
0.35.
0.35. So what is that answer? What is that answer?
It's the
Mm-hmm. Is the number of hours required per unit altogether, which equates to 21 minutes. So well done. So these are some of the things that I'll expect you to quickly do during your reading time. Then, Miss Poppy Smith is extremely concerned about the manufacturing because 2 of the 12 baking ovens broke down and must be repaired altogether. So when we've got a problem with our input, we think of what topic? So optimization. So optimization, remember that you can optimize based on raw material, we can optimize based on labor hours. In this case, they're optimizing on machine hours altogether. But there is no limitation. So you needed to prove. So in your mind, I needed you to have those 6 steps that we discussed. What is step number 1?
Finding the limiting factor.
But here they've told you. So what will be your step number 1? So step number 1 is to prove what? What's available, and you do what? So, now step 1 is not about the available. Identifying what? So we are trying to identify whether this is limiting or not. So how do we prove whether this is limiting or not? So when will it be limiting and when will it not be limiting? That's the question. So what are you going to do? So tell me your thought process. What are you going to do? So you're going to calculate the available first. Then do what? Subtract your required. Then if the required is more than available, what are you going to conclude? So this is a limiting factor. That's step number 1 altogether. So that step, even though they're telling you that there's a problem with the machine, you still need to prove that to the examiner. There will be marks allocated for it. So there is no way that you will just say, oh, the examiner told me that we've got a problem with the machine, so now let me just prove how we need to what? To allocate the production time. You need to first start by saying, is this a limiting factor or not? Then, they said that the repairer is still waiting for the necessary replacement parts before he can continue with the repairs. He has indicated that the 2 ovens will be out of service for the 5 working days each. Each baking oven normally operates for 22 working days in a month and 7 hours per day altogether. Then they say to us that that's the information related to what? That's the information related to the EB. Then we look at Middleburg Bakery, MB. MB was UB's first bakery. This bakery operates a process costing system in the manufacturing of what? Savory cheese biscuits, SCB. The SCB's manufacturing process begins with the mixing of the direct material, flour, butter, cheese, and eggs, followed by the kneading of the dough. The dough is then cut into required forms and baked. The baked biscuits are cooled and packaged into individual packets of 500 grams. Are we together? So they were testing your basic education here to check whether you know your conversions, right? Which represents 1 unit of SB. These units are packaged on pallets for distribution to various supermarkets. Each pallet packs 48 units of SCB, right? All the direct material required to manufacture are added when? At the beginning of the process, right? Direct labor and manufacturing are then incurred evenly throughout the manufacturing process altogether. 1 kilogram of direct material yield 1 kilogram of biscuit. So is there a normal loss there? Is there any loss? They are saying to you there are no losses of the what? Of the raw material. Because if I put in 1, I get 1 biscuit. If I put in 1 kg, I get 1 kg of biscuits. Do you understand? Okay? But now they say to us there are normal losses. So that's interesting. So normal losses in the form of broken and rejected biscuits amount to 6% of the raw materials added. So in other words, the way that it works, it seems that they put in the material, then they do all this process that they've described above, then they get the biscuits. Then after they get the biscuits, it seems that there's still a process, right? Then they will go and identify, are all the biscuits fine? Then they'll say, this is not fine, this is fine, this is fine. And about 6% of all the biscuits produced, and by extension, all the raw materials put in, represents what? The losses altogether. These broken and rejected biscuits are identified almost at the end of the process, which is 80% completion. So our wastage point is what? So our wastage point is 80%. Happy? Okay? All broken and rejected biscuits are sold to bed breeders at what? 10 rand per kg, which represent normal gains altogether. Then actual information for the month of October 2018 was as follows. On 30 September 2018, 30 September, which is what?
Last month.
So it will be last month, meaning that it will be what this month? Opening. So we opened with what?
200 kg.
With 200 kgs. Right? How far were they? 60% complete altogether. So everything we discuss is starting to start making sense, right? Then they say that the raw materials comprises what one to, so they tell us the price, but let's focus on the quantity. I always find that if you get the quantities right, then you don't need to worry about the costing because it's just a matter of dividing. Okay? Then they told us that 1.3 tons was put in. What is 1.3 ton equal to in kgs? So we all know that. So 1 ton equals to 1,000 kgs. So if it's 1.3, we are agreeing that it's what? 1,003. So this is what has been put in. But is this what is completed? No? Let's read further. 2.4, they say 2.2 units were completed. Now they're changing. They've been giving us everything in kgs. Do you understand? Now they say to us, complete is what? Units. Now you needed to also convert these units to kgs. Then you'll remember what they said a unit is. A unit is equals to how many kgs?
500 grams.
So 1 unit is equals to 500 grams. And 500 grams is equals to how many kgs? 0.5 kgs. Do you agree? So now if I say to you I've completed 2,200 units, how many kgs is that representing? So it'll be 1,100 kgs because it is 2.2 multiplied by 0.5. Are we together? All together so far? Okay? Then they told you that we've got closing WIP. Of how much? 270 kgs. Now tell me, how far is it? 90%. Now, quick one, give me the keep and deduct. So give me that keep and deduct. So give me the keep and deduct decision for opening and keep and deduct decision for closing.
Keep both.
So what is our decision on opening? Keep, why? So the wastage point is 60. Our opening is what? So the wastage is 80. The opening is what? So do you agree that last year it didn't go through any wastage? So it's keep. Right? Then we check for closing. So closing, our wastage is 80 and it's now sitting at what? Has it gone through the wastage? Yes. So we keep. Well done. Now reconcile it back for me. In the next minute, reconcile input to output. Reconcile input to output. In the next minute. Anyone? Well, what are you looking for? So we say we always reconcile what to what?
Input.
Yes, so let's do that. Anyone wants to give it a shot? Happy? We're just doing the reconciliation now. Okay? So, who wants to give it a shot? Okay? Sure. So what do you have?
Okay, my output is 1,100.
So output is 11,100, right?
And then input.
Sorry. Output is 11,100. I agree with you.
Output is 1,500.
Input is 1,500. I also agree with you.
And then normal loss is 90, which is the 6% of 1,500.
So you kept both the input and the output in the total input,
Yes,
and therefore you said 1.5 multiplied by
6%.
6%, and you got what?
90.
I agree with you.
And we have a closing of 270.
You've got a closing of 270.
And then our normal loss was 40.
Well done. Well done. This is what they wanted from you guys. This is it.
So this is how we're supposed to show the quantities.
100%. This is the starting point. I always find that the next part is easier, but this is the most difficult. When you get this wrong, when you take it to material and when you take it there, that it gets a bit complicated. But this column you show 100%. That's the first column. All together. Then, they then said that let's break down the output, because then the output, tell me how much is the output from opening and how much is the output from added in the current period. So now tell me, out of the 110, how much of the 110 is coming from the previous process or previous period? 200, but you just said to me that we lost something. So we lost how much? So how much will have been completed from the opening stock? So it will be how much?
188.
Then let's agree. This is always a balancing figure. That is always a balancing figure. So you only deal with the opening stock, and then you balance off with the added in the current period. Always. Do not calculate this. Always balance this and this with it out together. So how much will the balancing figure be? How much will the balancing figure be?
912.
Huh? 912. Like this. 100%. So 100%. So let's say you get into the exam tomorrow, right? You get into the exam tomorrow. And they said this similar scenario, 100% similar, but they then say that opening was actually 95% complete. Right? They tell you that opening was 95% complete. How will your answer change? How will your answer change? How will your answer change? So this changes quite a lot of things dramatically. So what will change?
The loss.
So first it will be the loss, right? So do you agree that the output will not change? It will still be 110. And the input is still 1.5. But your loss will be based on what? Only on the 1.3, which is how much? 78. Then this is still 270, right? So this will then be what? 52. Right? And then what will be the opening? It will be the full 200 because it is now after the loss. And therefore, you'll balance off with what? With 900. Do you see how this works? Does that make sense?
No. Why do we now use the one?
Because this has already passed the wastage, so you cannot do the wastage on the opening stock. You cannot do the wastage on the opening stock. But do you see? So this will be, it's hard to cram it out because you need to check the information carefully. Otherwise, your answer will be thrown out completely. Do you understand? So look at how these two answers are so different from each other. Just because they changed where the opening stock was sitting at. But do you understand how to use the keep and deduct? If you do that, then you've mastered process costing. Do you understand? Are we all happy with this? Are there any questions? Let me just delete this so that I don't confuse you. So are we all happy with this part right here? Questions? Okay, let's quickly finish the reading and then let's go through the detail. Then they said to us that M and B, so MB only uses amount 2.7. MB only uses far and wide limited to distribute the biscuits to the supermarket central warehouse. The agreement with far and wide stipulates a fixed monthly fee of 5,000 plus a cost of 100 rand per pallet transported. MB's office equipment was bought on 1 August 2015 for 130 and immediately brought into use. On this day, the resale value was determined to be 10,000 at the end of its useful life. The equipment is depreciated monthly on a straight line basis over its useful life of what? Of 5 years. Then they conclude with point 3 on page 4. UB Central Procurement is fully responsible for all the wheat flour inventory management. The company currently uses economic order quantity to manage all its wheat flour inventory requirements. The flour used in Middleburg and Emalahieni bakeries is purchased in bulk from Golden Mills. UB uses approximately 24 tons of wheat per year in their manufacturing. Manufacturing takes place evenly through each financial year, which consists of 300 working days altogether. Wheat flour is currently purchased at 8 Rand per kg. Safety stock amounts to the manufacturing requirements of 3 working days. The estimated cost to place one order amounts to manufacturing requirements. The estimated cost of placing one order amounts to 1,200. Direct inventory holding cost, excluding the annual expected return, amounts to 5 Rand per kg. The current required return of 6% per annum, and the current EOQ is 3,000 kgs. So they calculated EOQ for you, which was nice. UB has been approached by another wheat flour supplier, New Mill, offering a purchase price of 7 Rand per kg, provided that orders are placed in batches of what? Of 1,500 rands per kgs per order. New Mill is situated further from the bakery, and as a result, ordering cost will increase by 50% per order altogether. Now, the requirement. Assist Ms. Poppy Smith by calculating whether EB will be able to manufacture the required quantities, the required budgeted number of CC and CM biscuits for the month of November 2018. So the examiner here was generous. He could have just simply asked you for part B and said 12 marks. But he said to you, give me first whether they will be able to produce them. In other words, he was saying, do test or step number 1. Do you understand? Which made life much easier. Or hopefully it was meant to make life easier. Then calculate the budgeted monthly optimum manufacturing mix for EB for the month of November 2018, 5 marks. Then prepare MB's actual quantity statement for October 2018. Now we are moving away from EB, we are going to what? We are going to MB. And they want the actual quantity statement. So they want this altogether, but expanded further to show material and conversion cost. But we're going to get them. Then based on your answer in B, calculate the equivalent cost per unit, right? 3 marks. That's why I said to me that if you can get the production schedule, you should be done with process costing. Because you can see equivalent annual cost or equivalent cost per unit is only 3 marks. Then they say, using your calculations in part B and C, prepare the statement of profit or loss for the month of October, 12 marks. With the imminent retirement of Ugogo, please explain to her daughters 5 benefits of divisionalization or divisionalizing the 2 bakeries. Theory, copy and paste, altogether. What do you mean? Huh? No, but I'm saying, okay, but we are going through it. Was E not nice? E, remember that it's copied from the textbook. Effective decision, encouraging the manager, quality of decisions, and so on and so on. But as I'm saying that was a nice one. Why are you not convincing? Okay, let's look at F. Recommend to UB whether or not the special offer from New Mill should be accepted. Support your recommendation with the appropriate and relevant calculation. Ignore any qualitative factors. So this is also one of the questions that they dealt with in this tutorial letter or in the study guide, where they say that if we've got an economic order quantity and we've got an offer, we need to assess that offer by evaluating what will be the change in the holding cost, what will be the change in the purchase price, and what will be the change in the ordering cost. And we're going to compare the current situation with the new situation. And if it's positive, we accept the offer. If it's negative, we stick with the current supply altogether. So it's a mix of decision making and EOQ. But let's start from the beginning. So from the beginning, I think we are all on the same page that we want or we are required to determine the available, right, and compare with the required. Do you agree? So that is what we need to be able to do. So now let's start with the available. So what did they say to us? They say that we have a problem with 2 of our 12 baking ovens, meaning that we've got how many left?
10.
So I've got currently, so you can say that total is what? 12, right? Broken, it's 2. So currently you have how many? 10. Then how many hours does each baking oven give you? So they said what?
7
It's 7 per day. So hours per day, right? 7. And how many days are there in a month? So days per month is 22, right? Sorry, let's do this. Because they are working in days to make it easier. Let's delete, so yeah, let's delete this for now. So let's just do it from scratch. So we've got a total of what? We've got a total of 12, right? So how many hours do we expect to get from these bakeries? So we've got, so from this oven, we've got 12 ovens, right? Each gives us 7 hours per day, right? Then there are how many days per month? 22. So how many hours did we expect to have? I expected to have 1848. So this is what I expected to have should all of them be working out together. But we had a problem with 2 of them. But the 2 were not broken down for the entire month. Do you agree?
Yes.
They were broken down for how many months? For 5 days. But it means it's 7 hours per day multiplied by what?
5 days.
Okay, we're going to talk about 2 options because I think maybe you guys might have done it differently. So the one that are broken, we're going to lose 5 days because they said that he has indicated that the 2 ovens will be out of service for 5 working days each altogether. So how many?
70 hours.
2 times will be what? So 10 times 7 is 70, meaning that you've got how many available? 1778 altogether. So that's option 1. So option 2, which is what we were doing before, right? You can then say that you've got now available after the ones have been broken, right? 10 ovens multiplied by 7 multiplied by 22 days altogether, which will be how much? 1540. Then you'll say the ones that are broken, how many days are they going to give you?
17.
They're going to give you 17. So 2 times 7 times 17? Hmm? 38. So when you add these 2, it should come to the same number altogether. Which one did you go with? But remember that here it's a matter of logic. Whatever way will get you there, you will not be penalized at all. So any of those 2 techniques, as you can clearly see, they're leading you to the same answer altogether. Questions? So they said 22 days minus 5 days that will be out of service. Yes. So 22 days, but this will be out of service for 5 days, so it's 17. Happiness. Okay. And then, that is what is available to me. Now, how much do I require? How much do I require? So she's given us hint earlier, or she gave us hint earlier on of how we need to think about it. So we will need to determine how many hours are required per unit first. And we'll then say we've got C, and CM. And she said that they've given us fixed overhead manufacturing cost of 4.2. And for the other one, it's how much? 3.6. Then we said that the cost of the overhead allocation rate is what? It's 12 rand. And we said with this information, we can get the hours per unit, which is how much? 0.35 and 0.3. Then what is the next thing to do from here? Once I've determined how much is required per unit, I need to ask for the budget. How much? This being? Totaling what?
1,890.
1,890. Do I have a problem or not? I do. I've got a shortfall of how much? 112. Out together. So, will EB be able to manufacture the required budgeted number of CC and SM biscuits? No. And guess how much this was? 7 marks. Remember to answer the question, right? Wait, did they say calculate? Calculate whether. So calculate whether. Based on the answer, there will be shortage. There will be a shortage. Don't forget, because they're saying calculate whether. So you need to respond back to the examiner that based on my calculation, we will not or we will be. What do you think? I think the examiners were a bit hurt last year because a lot of candidates complained that this was an impossible paper. Did it look impossible so? Does it look impossible so far? But what was your target for question 1? Are we gonna get there? So let's go. Then we had what? We had B. B now said what? B now said calculate the budget monthly optimum mix. So at this point, I know that I've got a shortage, but if I've got a shortage, I need to do what? I need to? I'm not hearing. We need to? We need to rank and determine which one to go for. Okay? So what is the process of ranking? So we'll then need to determine the contribution for each of these units, right? So remember, we start with contribution per unit, and then we go to contribution per limiting factor. So what is the contribution per unit? $12.25. And then 11.10. Agreed. Then you had to convert it to contribution per what? Which is dividing by 0.3, 0.35, right? To get contribution per limiting factor of what? 35? 37. Then you do what? Which one did you like? CM, you gave it a 1, and this one you gave it a 2. So this you are comfortable with? No questions about this. So the process here, as I said, once you understand the steps, it becomes much easier to do altogether. So I'm quite happy that you seem to have a good grasp of that principle. And if it ever comes again, it never changes. You still need to go through this process. Then, I think let's then move on to what? Let's move on to B, right? B, as I said, the difficult part was that outlining of what? Of the input, right? Which we've gone through. So we have said that the opening was 188, right? And then you said the one that was added was 912, right? This added up to 1.1, right? Then we had normal. You said normal was 90, and you said abnormal was what? Was 40, and you said closing was 270. And we closed off with 1.5 altogether. So this next part, I always find that it's much easier. So we've got material, right? And we've got the conversion cost. So you'll put the units and the percentage, right? Altogether. So now we need to be driven by what process we apply. Remember, there's a difference between first in, first out, and there's a weighted average cost method, right? So if it is weighted average cost method, what did we say? We said that opening stock, we will bring everything that has been completed to date altogether. But if we use first in, first out, we will disregard everything that was done to date and will only bring what needs to be completed in the current period altogether. Do you remember that principle? So weighted average cost method, we bring in everything from the previous period and we include it in the current period. And we add it to the cost that we incurred in the current period. Whereas, if we've got what? If we've got first in, first out, we disregard everything that was done before and we only bring in what needs to be done in the current period. Right? So now which method does this entity apply? First in or weighted average cost? First in, first out. They told us at the beginning. And we are now starting with regards to material. Right? For the opening stock, how much material was put in the previous period? How much material was put in the previous? 100%, because it's put in at the beginning of the process. So how much do we still need to put in the current period? 0. So you got 0 for this. So that means it's 0 quantities as well. Altogether. Then for the ones that were added and completed, how much material did we put in the previous period? 0. So how much material did we put in the current period? 100%. Altogether. So 912. Are we all clear? Then for the items that were lost, how much material did we put in Eh? So in this case, it will be what? It will be 100% material altogether. So we've got 90. And what about for the abnormal loss? By the time we go to the stoppage, it was also 100 altogether, which is 40. Do you agree? Then what about to the closing stock? By the time we got to 90% of the stock, and we put, how much material do we put in? And we've got 270. Are we clear of where all those things are coming from?
So, since, like, don't we have to, like, maybe convert these kgs into units in order to do this? Or we can still do it with the kgs?
You can still do it. You can convert the final answer. Yes, and what made it easier here is that, what do you call it? What did they said, oh no, it's the other one. No, it is. So they said 1 kg of raw material relate to 1 kg of biscuits. So whatever answer you got, if you then end up with, say, 1,500, it means that's 1 kg of the biscuits. So if you now want to convert them into units, you'll just multiply by 2 to get the packets because it's half a gram, or it's half a kg for each. But you could have easily do that. But you'll see that the official solution had 2 solutions. For the candidate that wanted to work in units from the very beginning, and for the candidate that wanted to work in kgs from the very beginning. But don't mix them up. Whatever approach you decide, so if you decide to work in units, keep units throughout. If you decide to work in inputs or kgs, liters, and so on, keep that throughout. But don't do back and forth. It's either you convert at the beginning or you convert everything at the end. But don't convert as you go, because you'll just what? Complicate things. Just like we did when we started, we were given some in units, we converted them to kgs, and everything was now kg, and we move forward. So if they want units from us, then when we get to the end, we'll just convert the units. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay? Now, quickly give me CC, the conversion cost. Tell me how will that look like? Are there any questions on what we've done here? Now tell me, so show me the percentage and show me the quantities. Remembering that they use first in, first out. Everything that was done before is not carried into the year. We only focus on completing what has not been done. So now tell me, how will CC look like? Okay, let's go. Who wants to give it a shot? What do you have as for the opening stock? What do you have? Percentage complete? Or percentage? 40. Yes. And then it's 40 of the input, which will be how much? 70. So how much? 75.2. What did you do? So 75.2. Okay, that's fine. Then for added, 100%, right? Good. Then now, normal loss. So by the time we lost it, where was it sitting? Remember, 80%, right? And that would have been what? 72, right? Then we had abnormal, 80% as well, right? Because they were identified at the same point. And that would be what? 80% of 40? 32. Then the closing, 270, how much was closing sitting at? 90. Altogether. And it gives us 243. Do you see that? So that was worth 8 marks. But remember our discussion about shortcut method. You remember it? Remember that if you don't like it, this is fine. This is the long way, but it's fine. Right? But we said that if you are given a process costing, it might be worth your time to check whether the shortcut method is applicable or not. So what was the difference again? The long method, what it will do, it will cost the normal units that we have here. After it costs them, it will then, let's take the cost of the normal and let's allocate it to what? Let's allocate it to finished goods and let's allocate it to work in progress. You remember that process? And we saw that it's a lengthy process. But if the shortcut method is applicable, you will be expected to determine whether it's applicable or not. Do you remember the key determinant of when the shortcut method is applicable? What do you check? Whether what? Whether? Whether the whether the what? What do you check? What do you check? When does this become eligible for? When does this become eligible for that? For the shortcut? When the opening and the closing have passed the wastage point. When the closing has passed the wastage point. Right? So, another way to look at it is to say that whatever is put in the current period, right, should have gone through the wastage point. Right? Are we together? So it should not have gone through the wastage point in the prior period, but it should go through the wastage point in the current period. That's number one. Are we together? So check the opening. Does it go through the wastage point in the current period, or did it go in the prior period? If it is in the current period, then tick number one for the shortcut method, which is the case here. Because this came without having passed the wastage point, and it passed the wastage point in the current year. So the question is that it has not passed the wastage point or not. It's whether it has passed the wastage point in the current period altogether. Because if it did in the prior period, it means that they will have applied the shortcut method in the prior period with regards to this material altogether. And it means that some of its normal loss is left in the previous period. So it won't balance off quite well. So the opening stock, you check, did it pass the wastage period in the current year? Tick altogether. Then number 2, did the closing stock pass the wastage period in the current, did the closing stock pass the wastage point in the current period? Yes, another tick altogether. So in this case, we had both ticks, that the opening passed the wastage point in the current year and the closing passed the wastage point in the current year. So if that is the case, you could have done what? The shortcut method altogether. So with the shortcut method, everything is the same, except here you then just put what? 0, 0 altogether.
You put 0 just for the normal and not the abnormal.
Yes. So they remember that the principle is that normal has to be absorbed into good production. So we don't want to put 0 as well, because it will be assuming we are absorbing the normal into, we'll be absorbing the normal into, the abnormal into closing stock, which is not what we want, because abnormal has to be expensed immediately. Does that make sense?
So then, when we say that the opening has passed the wastage point,
Yes.
so the wastage point is at 80%.
So the question is, has it passed the wastage point in the current period? So the wastage point is 80%. We are in agreement, right? Yes. So the opening stock when it started was what? So does it pass the wastage point in the current period? Yes. So question 1 has been met. What do you mean?
So
Yes.
we are at 60. Does it pass the wastage point when it's at
We are at 60 at the opening in the current year, not in the previous year. That's all.
the opening?
Yes. So when we start, we've got opening at 60. So the question is, does it pass the wastage point in the current period? It didn't in the last period because it was 60% complete. So it's going to pass in the current period. So that's tick number 1 altogether. Then we go to the closing. The closing, did it pass the wastage point in the current period? The closing is at 90%. So it passed in the current period. So we've got both ticks. So the shortcut can apply.
What if we only had 1 tick?
So then it won't work. You have to go through this way. Yes. Remember that this way will always get you to the answer. And they will not penalize you. It's just it will put pressure on your time. Do you understand? For you to get the full marks, it will put pressure on your time. So they've got a couple of examples in your study guide as well, where they're saying test wastage point, shortcut method applicable or not. Then they say here it's applicable. If this is true, this will not be applicable. So go through those exercises as well, because as you will see, the long method takes time, but it will always get you to the answer. The shortcut method will get you to the answer, but much quicker. And they even further said that you will not be told, you will need to know whether this is the shortcut method is applicable or not. And if you apply the shortcut method and it's not applicable, they say they will penalize you altogether.
So it's safe to use the long.
It's safe to use the long.
It's safe, but it's costly from a time perspective. So you need to balance out the two. If you're a fast writer, you can do it. I know some people write fast.
What way is it costing time?
Because remember that you're going to calculate the equivalent cost per unit for this, right? Then you allocate to finished goods, right? You allocate to normal, you allocate to abnormal, you allocate to closing. Then after you take normal, the one you've allocated, then you reallocate it to finished, abnormal, and closing. But with this shortcut, You allocate once, and normal will have been automatically allocated. Yes, so that's why I'm saying that for people that write fast, they will not be able to see the difference. Because they can quickly, because once you've got this, you'll then just say, let's say that, to keep it simple, let's say you get to whatever and you say equivalent cost per unit, and it says 2 rand, right? And here you say it's 4 rand. So you'll then say, all right, here it's 912 times 2 rand. 90, yes, 90 times 2 rand. 40 times 2 rand. 270 times 2 rand. Then you'll come 912 times 4 rand. 72 times 4 rand, and so on. Then you'll add the answer you got for this and the ones you got for this, for the long method, right? Then you'll say, all right, now let me go back to what? Let me go back to reallocating. Then you'll say that the amount here, let's say this ends up being 3,000, right? Then you'll say 912 divide by 912 plus 40 plus 270 times 3,000. Then you'll then do 40 divide by this times 3,000. So it's a long process. Then you'll have to redo it the same this side. And that's why we call it the long method, but the answer will be 100% the same. It's just the other one, it's very, very short, and therefore very good on your time. Yeah, it's safe. This one is always safe.
So now, for this question, we are done, or we have to do that part of...
So now remember that the first part, so what we've done here, we've answered B only. So B is, this is B. B says, give us the quantity statement. This is the quantity statement.
We have to show the total.
Yes, yeah. So the totals, so let's add them up with our long method. So the total will be what? 1, 5. No, it can be more than this. 1, 3. 1, 2, and here? 3, 4. So that is this. So that is B. B is done. Then we go to C. C says, give us what? The equivalent cost per unit. Then we'll say the cost. Remember that we are using first in, first out, so we only care about the cost for the current period. So the cost for the current period is what? 75,300, right? For material. Sorry. 25,100 for material, right? Then we've got 75,300 for the material. Altogether. So let's do this quickly. Let me just show you for the material only, the long and the short method. Again, so we are saying the long method, right? So we're going to calculate the equivalent cost per unit for material, right? So we'll say 25,100 divided by what? 1312. Let's round to 2 decimals. It'll be how much? 13. So you've got 19.13, right? Then you'll allocate to completed units altogether. Then you'll say 912 times 19.13, which will be how much? $17,448. 448. Then to normal.
It's 1722.
17. Abnormal. Lastly, closing. Oh, wait. Let's do it for, I forgot about the normal loss, but let's do it for the principal here. Then what do you have? 5165. So this will be 25,100 altogether. Because it should add up back to 25,100, right? But you'll remember that we've got normal gains here. So they'll need to be deducted here. So you'll allocate the net. But let's just go with the principal. So now, with the long method, you then need to make this 0. Do you understand? You then need to make this 0. You make it 0 by reallocating to the complete, abnormal, and closing altogether. So you make it 0. So how do you make it 0? You take this and you reallocate it to this, this, and this. So you'll then say to me that this 912 for complete, right? And this abnormal 40. And this what? Closing with 270. So total is what? 1222 altogether. Then you will say 912 divided by 122 multiplied by 1722. What do you have? One? 1285. So then you'll add this and this to get you what? 18733. Then you do the same, but now you allocate 40 out of 122, right? So 40 out of 122 times 1722. 56. Okay, 56 plus 765. 821. Lastly, you allocate 270 divided by 122. 380. Then this should add up to 0, right? So this should add up to 172. Then this adds up to 0, right? So if it doesn't, there should be 1 or 2 rounding at least. Have we checked? All happy with it adding to 0. Yeah, so it should be very small difference. So 516 plus 380, how much is it? 896. Altogether. No, wait, because it's 5 there. So 516 should be. But do you see this? Do you see what we are doing? This is what the long method does. Now let's see the power of the short method. So the short method will say the following. The short method will say 25,100, right? Divide by the 1222. So it will say, let's exclude normal from the very beginning. And let's work with the other ones. Yes?
Sorry. So the long, you have to show these 3.
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
Yes. That's why it's the long. That's why I said it takes time.
So we also have to do it for conventional process.
And do you see the time that I'm talking about now?
Oh, okay.
Yes. Now look at the short. The short, we are saying 25 divided by 122, which is how much? So it will give you a higher
21.
21.
Oh, it's 20.54.
So is how much?
It's 20.54.
20.54, right? Then multiply by 912 for complete.
187.3.
3. Do you see the short?
Yeah.
So it's a shortcut for a good reason. So you see why you need it. This is going to put a lot of pressure on your time. You're going to get to the answer, but it's going to put a lot of pressure on your time. So I will always encourage you to test for those two things. If they are not there, then let's be clear. The examiner will have given you the time and the marks for you to do this. So if the shortcut is not applicable, then you don't need to worry about time. The examiner will have given you the marks. So he will give you the marks to do this first step. Then he will give you the marks to do this and to add them together. But if it's not there, the examiner is not giving you the time to do that. And you'll be finding that it's a 3 marks question or 4 marks question and you're doing it in 10 minutes and you know that that's not the right way to do it. Sure. You had a question?
Can you like maybe on the first step?
This one, the long one.
Units, no.
Or this one?
7 units.
Mm.
Maybe do the long method. Then on the last step, on the statement, then you do the shortcut.
I think that the marking might depend on the examiner's discretion. Because he will feel that you are gauging your bets. Like, just in case I'm not right there, let me, yes. So it seems that he'll want you to have the 1 to 2 from the very beginning here. So that's what all the answers do. So it might be that for putting 0, there might be a mark. I think maybe if you say to him that you got this, but then after him, you then say, going forward, the shortcut method is applicable because you write those two thinking process down, and then you say that going forward, I'm going to use the 1, 2, 2, 2. Then maybe in that case, they might also consider it because you will have shown understanding in your approach. So, and then if you are wrong, then maybe you can keep this mark, so hopefully. So let's hope for that.
Because I can see that maybe they're asking it in different subsections or sections.
Yes, so maybe you do this for part B, and then when you go to part C and say, but the shortcut method is applicable, yes. So that could potentially work, but show him your understanding of the shortcut method. But does that make sense? Is process costing better? The key thing, as I'm saying, once you master this reconciliation of opening and output, you are done. I generally found that candidates don't struggle here. It is the first part where now you're saying how much is abnormal, how much is normal, and so on, that tends to be the most risky step.
Just want to quickly find out, is it for the shortcut method where the normal loss is 0?
Yes. Happy. Okay? Done. Here. Questions, guys? Questions? Okay, let's take a quick 5, and then we'll come and quickly talk about aspects of part B. Or part A. Yeah, part A will just talk about the approach when you conclude F. So quick 5 minutes.